Hey everyone, thought I'd start off today's episode with a quick life pro tip. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you think to yourself, maybe what I'll do today is I'll take a Baconator combo from Wendy's. I will put that along with the fries and along with the drink, stuff all of that in a blender, blend the whole thing up, and then attempt to consume the concoction that results from having done that. If you ever consider doing that, don't. It's not nice. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Sounds Good Makes Sense, a discussion show for the World of Warcraft player. My name is Devilor, and let's talk about that $90 mount. If you are somehow still unaware of the existence of this thing, because it's been all over the internet the last few days, Blizzard recently introduced the Trader's Gilded Brutosaur, which is a Brutosaur mount, much like the original that was introduced back in Battle for Azeroth. It comes at a $90 price point. It's available just for direct purchase for $90 on the Blizzard shop. And it comes with, much like the original Brutosaur, it does have a NPC that gives you auction house access from pretty much anywhere, as well as another NPC that gives you access to a mailbox. And like I said, that is a $90 price tag, at least in the US. $90 US is what this thing actually costs. And it's only available for a limited time as well. It's only available on the shop, or only staying on the shop, until January 6th, which, side note, Blizzard, that's kind of a weird, like, why would you choose that date? That seems like one of those dates to probably avoid doing things on, but whatever, that's fine. It is available up until the start of January for $90 on the Blizzard shop. And as you might expect, there have been a lot of opinions around about this. Beginning with the most obvious immediate response, which is WTF Blizz, $90 for a mount? Are you kidding me? It's a mount. Like, why is it 90? That's more than the game costs. Why is not, that's half a year's subscription is $90. And all I get for this is a mount. Now, obviously, it's a mount with a lot of huge quality of life improvements that come with it, such as, well, in fact, directly meaning the auction house access and the mailbox access. And we're going to talk about what those quality of life improvements, like how much of a quality of life improvement that actually is. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I do agree that like $90 for any sort of microtransaction, that's a bit hard to, that's difficult to accept. That feels like too much for any sort of microtransaction in a game, like regardless of whatever other logic you're going to apply to it. $90 is a lot for a mount in a video game. But I do think it's worth looking at, okay, why is it priced like this? How does this compare to the original Brutosaur mount, the Mighty Caravan Brutosaur that was added back in BFA? And is this the correct choice for a price like this? Like, is that actually the correct price for something that gives this much of a quality of life improvement and so on? There's a lot to actually consider and think about here. So I want to start just by analyzing this whole thing. We'll make some comparisons to the original Brutosaur, and we'll go from there. Now, as a reminder, the Mighty Caravan Brutosaur, the OG Brutosaur, this was added back with the release of Battle for Azeroth. It became accessible as soon as you could get to the capital cities in BFA, or as soon as you could get to the BFA content, essentially. So technically added with pre-patch, but wasn't accessible and wasn't able to be purchased until you could get into the new continents. It was 5 million gold was the cost for this thing, 5 million gold. And it stuck around through the entirety of the BFA expansion, all the way up to Shadowlands pre-patch, I believe it was with pre-patch that it was removed when Shadowlands came along. So it was available for like 2 years. It was a long time that you had access to being able to go and purchase this thing. It just, it also was a 5 million gold price tag. So you maybe needed those 2 years to be able to afford it in the first place. Now, with Shadowlands, it was removed from the vendors. It does still show up on the black market auction house from time to time, and pretty much always sells for gold cap, which is like 10 million gold. So it's still a lot of gold that this thing actually goes for if and when it does show up. By comparison, the new one, the one that just came out, the Trader's Gilded Brutosaur, this costs $90. It doesn't have a direct gold cost, but we're going to talk about how that compares here in a second. It costs $90 and is actually slightly better because it has, not only does it have the auction house access, But like the original Brutosaur, the other person that sits there is just like a vendor that you can just vendor things to or repair your gear. The Brutosaur, the new Brutosaur, has the ability to access your mail on top of it as well. So not only do you have an auction house, you also have a mailbox, which basically means you can kind of do pretty much anything you want from this thing. But let's start to look at the actual cost, because the cost of things ever since the WoW token was added in terms of shop costs and in terms of gold costs, there's been it's been a comparable thing ever since the WoW token came in, because you can turn gold essentially into BattleNet balance, and vice versa. You can turn money into gold by buying and selling tokens, depending on if you're buying them for real money or if you're buying them for gold. The difference of things that you can do with them as a result. So, what does this actually mean in terms of comparison? So, $90 is 6 WoW tokens, and this works out to be pretty much the same most places. Like most places around the world, you're going to need 6 WoW. Like I know in the Euro, for example, it's going to be 6 WoW tokens to be able to purchase this thing. I believe that works out. I'm pretty sure they haven't intentionally set that to be the case. I could be wrong. If your own currency, if it works out to be differently in your own currency, please let me know. Leave a comment. I'd love to know about that. But for the most part, the new mount, essentially, if you want to buy it with just WoW tokens and you want to buy it with just gold, you need to buy 6 WoW tokens to get enough balance to then be able to go and buy the mount. And in North America, when this mount was first revealed, tokens at the time were going for about 200K. They shot up 200K gold, I should say. They shot up a whole bunch to around 350K gold for a little while. And now they seem to be settling down somewhere in the vicinity of like 250, 260K. Again, in North America, it's been similar. The trends have been similar in Europe, which is the other region that I was looking at the historical data for on this whole thing. Just that Europe has more expensive. The gold cost for tokens is higher in Europe just in general. So it's about another 80 to 100K per token in Europe. But what that means is if you want to just spend gold on WoW tokens, use those WoW tokens to convert into BattleNet balance, because they can turn into $15 of BattleNet balance each. So you want to buy your 6 tokens with gold, turn them all into BattleNet balance. It's going to take you those 6 tokens. That'll get you the $90 of BattleNet balance that you need. If you want to do that in North America, it's going to cost you about 1.5 million gold as of the time that somewhere in the vicinity of 1.5 million gold as of the time that I'm recording this. And in Europe, it's closer to 2 million gold in total is how much you're going to have to spend, which is a lot for sure. But that's still quite a bit less than 5 million was for the Brutosaur back during BFA. In fact, for the OG Brutosaur, if you wanted to do the reverse, instead of buying BattleNet balance with your gold, you wanted to go the other direction, use real money or BattleNet balance, but use real money in order to purchase the gold price that was then needed to buy this mount, because the Brutosaur was just on a vendor for 5 million gold. If you wanted to buy enough gold through the WoW token to be able to purchase that mount, you needed way more. It was much, much, much more expensive, because not only was there more of a gold price that was necessary, it was that 5 million gold instead of the about 1.5 million gold that it costs roughly in North America, using the way that the metrics are hanging out currently or mathing out currently for the WoW token in North America. Not only was it that higher gold price of 5 million, but tokens got you less gold back then than they do today. Like I was just saying, like when this thing hit, you were getting about 200K gold per WoW token, and now that's shot up a bunch to where if you sell a WoW token to collect gold, you're getting about 260K in North America right now. Back during BFA, when the Brutosaur was around, it was usually hovering around like the 120, especially towards the end when the deadline started coming up. It was hovering around 120K gold per WoW token. And at that price, obviously it fluctuated, and this was around for 2 years. So there were lots of situations where maybe you could have bought significantly fewer tokens and gotten more gold out of it. But I'm just looking at that slice of time that was right towards the end of BFA when the Shadowlands pre-patch was about to hit. At that time, to get all of the gold that you needed just by purchasing WoW tokens, you would have needed around 40 to 42 WoW tokens. If you're going off the 120K price, it would have been 42 WoW tokens, which if you're buying all of those for real money, that's $840. And there were a lot of people that did that back then too. There were a lot of people, maybe you weren't buying all 5 million golds worth with WoW tokens, but you were probably buying a few WoW tokens to just get the rest of that gold together to be able to buy this Brutosaur mount. because at the time it was like, oh my God, this mount is so good. It has an auction house on it. I want to be able to use an auction house anywhere. So I'm going to do what I can, anything that I can to get the 5 million gold necessary. And for a lot of people, that meant dumping a good chunk of cash. Again, probably not the full like 5 million gold worth, but there were people spending a few $100s on this thing at the very least, just to be able to get this thing, which is actually, it's interesting because that has actually caused a lot of complaints to come out that the new mount is actually too cheap, because it is better than the old one because it has the mailbox instead of the just random vendor that you can just vendor things to. It has a mailbox, and there's so many other mounts that you can get for like, so like you can get the yak, it has a vendor. You don't need a vendor on the Brutosaur. There's other ways to do that. So it has the mailbox NPC on it. That sentence was difficult for some reason. But B, it's way cheaper. Like, it's significantly cheaper. If you're going to spend either way that you look at it, it is cheaper in terms of gold cost, and it's cheaper in terms of real money cost. And yeah, the OG Brutosaur, that was like 4 or 5 years ago now that thing came out. It's been around for a while, and there's always that element of, well, you've had it for this period of time, so you did get some of that value out of it. But I can also definitely see the perspective of someone who like really went hard on trying to earn all the gold that was necessary, or doing everything that they can, or like working, like maybe taking on extra or selling of their own things. I don't know, all the different ways that you might come up with the money that's necessary to be able to purchase this, or the gold that's necessary to be able to purchase this mount back then. It was not a small feat whatsoever. And I can definitely see people, I can understand why people would be upset that now there's just a $90 version that takes way less effort. It's $90 or 1.5 million gold, whichever way you want to slice it, takes way less effort and is better. Now, I will say in both cases, with both mounts, the auction house is the real quality of life value that's there. The mailbox is good. Don't get me wrong. The mailbox is better. And it would, like, if I had the choice today between, without having to think about any of the costs or anything, the choice between the original one with a vendor and the new one with a mailbox, I will always take the mailbox. Having the mailbox there is better than not having a mailbox. That's just straightforward and obvious and easy. But when you're out in the world doing stuff, you're usually not too far from a mailbox regardless. It's not going to take you that long to hop over to the nearest little quest town or whatever, especially in modern content. There's going to be a mailbox somewhere nearby. And there's also toys like Katie's stamp whistle, which you can get relatively easy. It's just like a little short quest chain that you have to go and do. It takes maybe an hour to just walk through all of it. Like it's really straightforward. Anyone can get this toy very easily that also summons a mailbox that you can then have mailbox access if you really need to out in the middle of nowhere. It does have a cooldown, but on those rare occasions where you're not near something else, or if you're like, I don't need to use a mailbox more than every couple of hours, it's relatively easy to get that toy, and then you essentially have the same effect regardless. So I don't actually think the mailbox is as big of a game changer as people are making it out to be, because again, there's other alternatives available, and the actual time save, even if you don't have the stamp whistle, the actual time save by having the mailbox accessible to you is relatively minor. It's only like a minute or so of travel at the most. The way, especially with how fast you move around these days with skywriting everywhere, it's really not saving that much time. It is saving time, like it is better than not having it, but I feel like the effect of the mailbox has been a little bit overstated. The real value is the auction house, because going to an auction house is a much bigger endeavor. Without this mount or the original Brutosaur either, if you need to use the auction house, that means going to a capital city. And that means more than likely using your Hearthstone, depending on where you are out in the world. It could mean, like, it means loading screens, which take some time and can take more time depending on other things. There's notably more travel involved, because not only do you have to go to Dornegal and then take the portal and then go to where it is inside the capital city, either Stormwind or Orgrimmar or wherever you go, and then go back and all this other stuff. Like there's notably more travel time, to the extent where it's significantly more useful and a significantly more of a quality of life improvement. And even if you're not looking at just like the total amount of time, because again, realistically, this is like maybe 10 minutes of time, probably closer to 5 minutes. If you just literally, like, if you're just counting the travel time and not the amount of time that you're spending using the actual auction house, because you're going to be doing that regardless of where you are. it's not that much of a time, but it is more annoying travel because it's not just a matter of like pop over to a town, there's the mailbox, click on it. It is use your Hearthstone, go to the place, go through a portal, go to another place, use the thing, and then do all of that in reverse again, and then get all the way back out to wherever you just were. So the auction house is definitely the higher quality of life improvement here between the two. I'm not like, if you have the original Brutosaur, I don't think it's worth dropping $90 to get the new one, unless you just like really, really, really need to be using a mailbox constantly. But if you don't have the original Brutosaur, this super seems worth it to me. Like even at this really high price point of $90, or using gold to buy tokens, getting it for the 1.5 to 2 million gold thereabouts, that sort of area, that really seems super worthwhile to me. The ability to access an auction house literally anywhere on its own is worth that amount. At least if you think about it in terms of gold cost, heck yeah, I'll pay 2 million gold to have the 5 million gold, but better mount. Like I would absolutely, like, that is a deal. And especially because if you're somebody that's trying to earn lots of gold, having the ability to have an auction house with you all the time is a great way to go ahead and do that. Like you will, just by virtue of having this auction house handy and available to you, you will probably start to make that gold back pretty rapidly. If you're doing things like, you know, checking auctions and keeping up with constant and keeping up with professions and so on and so forth, it will make it easier at the very least for you to earn that gold back. And there's questions to ask here about like, should they have even, like, I think one of the big questions to ask here is like, not so much the actual price, is the price too high or too low? I do think like $90 for a microtransaction is always going to be hard to swallow. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But if you think about it in terms of gold cost, it actually kind of seems reasonable in terms of gold cost. The secondary question, though, is like, should they have even made this mount available? Like, should this have even existed? Is this a ultimately a good or a bad thing for the game that this mount has been put in? And to answer that question, like, honestly, it's hard for me to find much in the way of issues. There's a couple that we'll get into in a moment. But it's hard for me to find much in the way of issues with this new Brutosaur that didn't already exist for the previous Brutosaur. Like if you're thinking about just terms of, in terms of just gameplay, having an auction house available to you everywhere. There have been people who've been saying, well, this is just one less reason for me to ever go to a city now. Like, are the cities going to end up being empty and dead and boring because no one's ever there because you don't need to go to a city to go to the auction house? That argument I don't really believe. Like, yes, we just in the last episode, we were talking about the garrison because you could do literally everything from your garrison. And that's also where you got all of your quests and stuff. There's still reasons to go to the major cities that aren't just the auction house. There's still enough other reasons to go to major cities that I don't expect, even if you have a Brutosaur, that you're going to, like, I've had a Brutosaur for a while now. I still go to the major cities. The fact that I have an auction house available to me everywhere doesn't stop me from going to the major cities for other reasons. It just means I'm less likely to go to a major city for 2 minutes and then leave again. So that I don't really think is super valid. Should they, like, there's always going to be questions about like, should microtransactions even exist? Especially in a video game that has a box price and has a sub fee. And I know there's all manner of opinions on that one, usually pretty negative towards the concept of having microtransactions in a game with a box price and a sub fee. I tend to be a little bit more lenient on microtransactions than a lot of people because my personal philosophy is if you don't want the microtransaction, don't buy it. And if a game developer ruins their game by putting in microtransactions that are too valuable, then the game developer that's the game developer screwing up. That's not necessarily inherently the cost of microtransactions being the problem. That is misuse of microtransactions in my mind. But again, I totally get the perspective of a lot of people saying that they would just rather there not be microtransactions at all. Again, especially in a game that has a box price and a sub fee. There is the question of, does this mount cross the line into essentially pay to win? Does this mount, like, is the quality of life and the convenience aspect that this mount adds so great that you are now essentially buying something that's going to give you a strong advantage over other players? I think for some types of players, it actually kind of is. Like if you're someone who uses the auction house all the time and you're spending a lot of time, like you're making money on the auction house or making gold on the auction house constantly, this is something that, yes, absolutely, the convenience level of this is through the roof, and this will assist in your ability to be able to do that. And then you will make even more gold, and you will be like I was just saying a minute ago, like if you're someone who uses the auction house a lot, you will make back the gold cost that you spent to buy the WoW tokens to get this thing it before too long. Like I don't have a good idea of exactly how long it will take, but you will over time make that back. That said, there's a lot to question about. Is paying for convenience really paying to win? Or is this something that like realistically, if you could go to a mailbox and just mail everything to an auction house alt, and then on that alt log in, pull everything out of the mailbox, list it all in the auction house, switch back over, like, yeah, it's saving you a couple of minutes, but how much is it actually saving you in terms of time overall and so on? And I think for people other than like extreme power auction house users, the benefit is really just it's less annoying to use the auction house more than anything else. And that's paying for convenience, and how much is paying for convenience really paying for win? And the whole conversation goes in a circle. We'll probably do an episode. Like I could talk about microtransactions and how microtransactions work for an entire episode, and just general philosophies on microtransactions and video games and so on. So we'll probably end up doing just a full episode on just microtransactions at some point here. I'm not going to go too deep down that rabbit hole right now, because we're trying to mostly talk about this mount. But I do think there is more of a case to be made for this being pay to win than pretty much anything else that you can purchase in World of Warcraft. It's definitely not pay to win in the sense that it will give you any real tangible advantages in terms of like character progression and so on. So it's hard. Like you're not gonna buy this mount and suddenly now you are getting world first raid invites and stuff like that. Like that's not gonna happen. You're not going to buy this mount and then suddenly the game gets just easier for you. It just makes things more convenient. And sometimes things being more convenient can have a like roundabout effect of making some aspects of the game easier. So that's why I say there's an argument for it to be pay to win, but it's definitely not directly pay to win in the sense of you have now bought better gear or something like that. It is interesting to note that I think Blizzard has now kind of put themselves into a corner a little bit with auction house mounts here. Like clearly this is not something that's going away now. Like even if they wanted to change the original Brutosaur and take the auction house off of it, first of all, that would piss off a ton of people, and the rage would be huge if they actually did that. But they would at least have some measure of being able to say, well, you got the mount and blah, 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 blah. And now we've decided to change it and blah, so on and so forth. But now they are directly selling and advertising this thing for a real money cost, and directly advertising that it gets you auction house access when they do that. So that ship is now sailed. There's no possibility of not having auction house mounts in World of Warcraft for the foreseeable future, probably ever. Which then makes me sort of question, like, okay, if everyone now has the ability to get this, or at least for a limited time has the ability to get this, what is the recourse for people who don't pick up this mount? Like, it's going to become so commonplace that this is available? Is it something that we expect to see? Like, are there going to be more auction house mounts in the future? If they come out with another Brutosaur in another couple of years, is that going to have something else on it? Is that one also going to be available for a limited time? I could see the potential of them perhaps adding something into the game that is stamp whistle like, but for auction house. So something that has a significant cooldown on it that allows you to summon a little beacon that lets you use an auction house for a short period of time and then go away and then stays on cooldown for probably 6 to 8 hours would be what I would expect for something like that. I could also see that existing, then pissing off a lot of people who just spent their $90 or a whole bunch of gold on this mount, because the whole reason they bought it was because they wanted to have the auction house access. And if there was then another way added to get that auction house access, they'd be like, well, why did I bother doing all of that? I now feel as though the effort that I put into that and the value that I've gotten out of it has been diminished. So it's definitely, I feel like Blizzard is now in a pretty weird spot when it comes to auction house access. Like, it's even now to the point now where in future expansions, if they put an auction house in the major city, like, does that make people feel like the effort they put into getting their Brutosaur, the money they put into getting their Brutosaur, does that diminish the value of it? Because the whole value of this is quality of life. And that means that other quality of life improvements along those same lines can diminish the value of this thing existing. I don't know. It's a weird situation that the game is now in when it comes to auction house access. And a lot of that is because it's such a pricey thing. Like the old one was even pricier. This new one, like $90 is still a lot of money no matter what. Like no matter how much of a quality of life improvement that is, $90 is a lot of money. And it kind of, in some ways, almost had to be, because I feel like if they had made it, like if this was a $30 mount or even a $40 mount that gave you this access, that would be like, that would really piss off all the people that put all that effort into getting the Brutosaur a while back, because now it's like even cheaper. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it probably could have been cheaper than it is, but not by a lot. I feel like Blizzard was kind of almost certainly feeling like they had to make this expensive so as not to overly offend the people that put all the effort into getting the original Caravan Brutosaur back during BFA. And even then, it's still not close. Like it's still very, very much less expensive. Like $90 versus like $840 is quite a lot compared in terms of the amount of money that you would have had to have spent to buy the gold-based mount back then versus the amount of money that you have to spend nowadays. Honestly, though, in a lot of ways, I'm almost more annoyed by the deadline than I am the price. In fact, I am more annoyed by the deadline than I am the price, because the price is one thing. I can see some arguments for why it should be that expensive. I can definitely see arguments for why it and no microtransaction at all ever should be that expensive. I just want to keep reiterating that, because I don't think, like, there are a lot of people saying, oh, this has now opened the door to having $90 microtransactions in WoW. And I think that's a valid concern. And I think if Blizzard starts to go down that route, it will get into that direction of microtransactions ruining the game. And I think that's very valid to say the fact that these microtransactions exist and give such a solid benefit makes you not want to play the game. That's a totally valid perspective. And I think it's worth being concerned that now that the $90 price tag has been put on something, that makes putting that $90 price tag on something else feel less scary in the future. But all that being said, it's really even more so than that price tag, it is the extremely limited amount of time that this is available for that feels like the more anti-consumer aspect of this thing to me. Let me explain what I mean. Putting such a strict time frame on this is something that the tech and the gaming industry and all sorts of different industries have been really, really, like, it's a huge marketing speak lately, is to try and create FOMO, trying to create that fear of missing out in your customer base so that they are more likely to purchase something. And the reason this feels super anti-consumer to me is that then they're not buying it because they want to have it. They're buying it because they think well, some people are, at least, right? Like it's trying to push people over the line to purchase it, not because you have convinced them that they want to have it, but because you have convinced them that they might regret not buying it later. Like the people who just really want this mount would have still bought this mount if it was available for 2 years again, right? The people who look at it and say, yes, I'm sad that I didn't get the original Brutosaur. I want this Brutosaur. I'm going to spend the $90 to get this Brutosaur, or I'm going to spend the gold on WoW tokens to get this Brutosaur because they want to have it. Those people were going to do that anyway. Like that customer has already decided that, yes, this is worth the value to me. What the limited time availability is adding to this, and this is the case for like everything, but for something like the Brutosaur at such a high price tag, it's felt much more directly. What it's adding is that sense of, well, if I don't buy it now, then I can't buy it later. So even if I'm not really sure that I actually want it, I should buy it, because if I don't, then I won't have the option anymore and I will have missed out. And that's that creating that fear of missing out that pushes people to purchase something that they don't even necessarily think is already worth the value on its own. It's creating this like false and artificial value by making it into something that you will not be able to purchase later. So you're now buying this more almost for the peace of mind of knowing that you're not going to regret not having bought it later than you are buying it because it's something that you just want to have. Like all in all, yeah, the price is very high. And yes, I don't think that like a big part of my brain says $90 for a mount in World of Warcraft. Yeah, that's absurd. That's crazy. Part of my brain goes, okay, but if it wasn't that much, that would cheapen the previous Brutosaur that already exists. And I personally don't know how worried I am about that myself, but I know a lot of people would be. So there's conflicting thoughts in my head about exactly where that price point lands and how annoyed I am at the $90 price tag, if I'm even annoyed at the $90 price tag. But I'm much more annoyed and much more clearly and firmly annoyed at the very, very brief window of time that this is available for. It's really only available for like 3 months. Again, it goes away on January 6th, which again, that's a weird date to pick to end something. Was like, just to avoid, let's avoid dates of like terrorist attacks for things that just, anyway. Um, Insurrections and such. Maybe let's not, maybe let's just stay away from that. That just seems obvious to me. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. It's more just the general limited amount of time that's available to this thing that is creating this FOMO and creating this environment where someone is like, okay, yeah, $90. I'm not sure if it's worth $90, but I'm sure that I might, I know that I won't be able to purchase it later. So I guess I should buy it. Like it's trying to create that line of thinking at the very least. And that's what feels anti-consumer to me. Cause like, it's not like there's any reason this thing should only be available for a limited time. It's not like there's any sort of like, oh, this, like you still buy the Cinder Kitten that was sold ages ago. So there's no direct inherent reason why there needs to be limited stock of this thing. It's entirely digital. So yeah, I don't know. It's a marketing tactic and a marketing gimmick that I'm just not a big fan of, I guess is where I'm going with all that. Anyway, those are my excessively rambly thoughts on this actually surprisingly complicated issue of the $90 mount being added to World of Warcraft. There's actually a lot to think about and a lot to dig into with that whole thing. So hopefully some of those thoughts at least sparked some thoughts of your own. This episode is less of a like me having the direct answer to something and more just putting thoughts out for consideration. And my brain is falling apart at this point, so we're going to move along. I do have a question that I wanted to get to today. This one comes from Uzile on YouTube, who said, what do you think of Blizz making it an option of using your Warband characters in the follower dungeons as opposed to the generic placeholders they use currently? They would still be AI controlled, but would be limited by the gear they have equipped and talents that you have selected. I don't think they would be eligible for gear, but to incentivize you keeping them viable, maybe they become eligible for some currency, residence cal, etc., just at a much more reduced rate than the character that you're actively playing. The character that is actually running the follower dungeons would be the only one eligible to get gear, just as it is now. So there's a few things to pick at here in this question. First, the concept of your Warband characters being usable in places where otherwise it's just some random generic NPC. I agree with that in concept. I think there's more going on to the follower dungeons and the NPCs that are in the follower dungeons that you're really considering here. But I'm going to come back to that because I want to answer the second half of this question first. I absolutely do not think under any circumstances at all, ever in the entirety of World of Warcraft, that it would be a good idea for your Warband characters to earn things while you are playing your main character. I think sharing things around between them is fine. Having like an item that is earned that you can then choose to say, this item isn't what I want for this character. Let me give it to this other character instead. I think that's fine. But this would very, very quickly start to go down the path of I need to have a full Warband and I am now required to, or it's at least significantly more efficient for me to get things by having a full Warband of characters that can then all go and do things at once. And that starts to get into like, a lot of this is coming out of my experience with Lost Ark, where you pretty quickly got into the state of needing to have multiple alts feeding things to your main, needing to have all these different characters available because that way you earned more things and things were more efficient for you overall. I don't think Warband should be giving efficiency bonuses outside of, I got this piece of gear, but it wasn't a piece of gear that I wanted, so I gave it to another character on my account. I would very much like to stay away from. So in the case where Warband characters were able to come in and you could tank alongside your healer character or whatever, Even in the case where that was something that became the case, I would not want those characters earning anything. It should just be purely a cosmetic thing. In fact, I don't think having it based off of their talents and stuff is a good idea either, especially for follower dungeons, which are meant to be extremely like low impact. These are meant to be, I want to see what this dungeon is, but I don't want to queue with a group. That's what that is for. That's the player that is for. I don't think adding more things onto that in terms of like, well, now you have to min max all your different characters. You got to make sure that they, oh, and are you having trouble in this follower dungeon? Then you should pick different talents for your healer character or whatever. I don't think that's gameplay that's needed for follower dungeons. That's just adding too much complexity to a system that is trying to be as simplistic as possible. I think the other thing that's important to recognize about follower dungeons, though, is that a lot of times those characters aren't just generic NPCs. Sometimes they are characters like there's one that you kind of end up doing as part of the campaign through the War Within, and you're actually going in there with lore characters that you've been questing alongside, and it's part of their story is what you end up doing as you go through this whole thing. So that's important to some extent. The other thing is that inside of a follower dungeon, these characters have voice lines. They have voice lines that say like, don't stand in that, or we have to go this way, or this is the direction, this is the path to take, and so on. And this is all stuff that was put in to attempt to guide players who maybe they don't understand the dungeon. Maybe they're new. Literally the target audience for follower dungeons is people that want to and perhaps need to be shown around a little bit. And so these characters all have voice lines, or at least some of them have voice lines. And you can't really have voice lines for characters when it's not necessarily going to be that character. So if you go in there and it's, instead of General Steel, whatever, it's your Death Knight, Bob the DK. And you're like, all right, Bob the DK. All of a sudden you sound like this completely different character. Like that just wouldn't really work. And it wouldn't really work out very well. I could see like there are some of them that don't really have lines. So I could see some of those being replaced. I could see like a DPS slot or two being one of your, like, I think that would be cool. It would be really neat to be able to go through something like this and be like, yeah, the gang's all here and so on. But if that were to be something that Blizzard would want to pursue, I would almost rather see that as Warband specific content that's something else, not necessarily replacing the followers in the follower dungeons. I feel like there's too much that would require to make that really sensible. I would like to see more situations in which, like one of the examples I was talking about last week is the idea of if they did player housing, have it be warband housing and let the other members of your warband be wandering around when you're not playing them. Stuff like that would be pretty cool. I think there's a few too many hurdles to get past to make this work for follower dungeons. And I definitely do not want any situation in which I now feel like I have to have a full warband that's all prepped and ready to go so that I can earn currencies faster or something like that. I feel like that would be crossing a line with the warband system that I'd prefer to stay on the other side of. But hopefully that answer shed some light on my particular opinions, because that was what you asked for when you sent in the question. Thank you so much for sending that in. A reminder, if you have questions that you would like to be answered here on the show, best way to do that is by either leaving a comment on right here on YouTube, or if you're a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Devilor. If you're a patron over there, you can find there's a link to a form inside the posting for this episode. Click that form, fill that out, because patrons do get first priority on having questions answered here on the show when they send them in. Also, reminder, you can check out my merch store. That's devilor.com. And my streamathon is still ongoing. The day that I post this may end up being the last day of the streamathon, but it is still ongoing at the time that I am recording this. So if you want to come over and check me out, twitch.tv/Devilor. We're still going strong over there and getting up to, I don't know what we're getting up to. Probably GTA RP is probably what I'm on at the day that this thing went up. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks again so much, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you later.